There are two kinds of pain, the kind that teaches and the kind that buries. For years, I told myself I was learning, growing, becoming stronger. But that night, as bone met drywall and silence cut sharper than screams, I stopped pretending. I wasn't surviving anymore. I was deciding. I heard the sound before I felt the pain. A door slam, muffled by drywall and distance, then the sharp rattle of porcelain, and finally, his voice, low and trembling with rage. My father never yelled. He didn't need to. That quiet fury was always worse than screaming. It seeped into your bones, froze the air around you, turned every word into a knife aimed just right. It was late, close to midnight. The house was asleep, or it should have been. But ever since they arrived, sleep had become more of a concept than a reality. I should have known tonight would be different. The storm had rolled in with a kind of drama only October can bring. Sheets of rain tapping against the windows like skeletal fingers, wind carving ghost whispers through the eaves. The kind of night where the past slips through the cracks. I'd tried to stay invisible. After Lily fell asleep, I slipped down to the kitchen to clean up. A few dishes, a glass of wine I'd been nursing for over an hour. I was halfway through rinsing the pan when I heard their door open upstairs. My body went still. Years of training kicked in. Quiet footsteps on carpet. A shadow along the hallway wall. Then he was there. "You think you're grown now?" my father said. No preamble. No hello. I turned, dish towel still in my hands. "Dad, it's late. Let's not." "Let's not," he repeated mockingly. His eyes, pale blue and empty, flicked down to the wine glass. "Drinking again. No wonder he left you." It happened fast. He crossed the room like a storm surge, his hand wrapped around my arm, his fingers bruising, and then I was slammed into the wall. The towel dropped to the floor. "You're a disgrace," my mother hissed from the kitchen door. I hadn't even heard her come in. Her voice was colder than the tiles against my back. 31, divorced, dragging that poor girl around like luggage. You failed as a daughter and a mother. Something inside me cracked then. Maybe it was a nerve. Maybe it was the illusion that their help was ever about love. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, breath shallow, the wall at my back, and took it. Until I saw the closet door, just barely ajar. A sliver of shadow moved, then a glint of fur, a rabbit's ear. "Lily." My voice caught. My limbs refused to move. My father was still shouting, somewhere far away now, but all I could see was her. Huddled in the hallway closet, 6 years old, trembling. Her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Tumbles, clenched tight in her arms, her knees pulled to her chest, one sock sliding off her foot. She didn't blink, didn't breathe, just watched, as silent as death, her eyes wide and glassy. My father's grip loosened just enough for me to twist away. I slid to the floor, numb, adrenaline washing through me in waves. My shoulder throbbed from where I hit the corner trim. A picture frame crashed beside me, one of those posed ones from years ago, a fake smile portrait we paid too much for. Glass everywhere. The image cracked down the middle, splitting my face from theirs. My mother's voice grew shrill, but distant, like it was echoing through water. She kept hissing words. Disappointment, embarrassment, ungodly. She didn't come closer. Neither did he. Not yet. I stayed on the floor, back pressed to the wall, staring at the jagged frame like it could somehow answer a question I hadn't asked. And then the sound. So small I almost missed it. A whisper. A thread. "Mommy, are you okay?" The voice was soft, but it cut through everything. The rage, the glass, the humiliation. All of it. I turned my head slowly toward the closet. Lily had pushed the door open a little farther. Her small face peeked through the crack, pale and glistening with tears. Her toy rabbit's ear flopped forward over her hand. I couldn't answer her. My mouth opened, but the words wouldn't come. My chest rose and fell, shallow and quick. My pulse beat behind my eyes, and all I could do, after everything, was nod. Once. Then I let my head drop back against the wall. My father stepped back. My mother disappeared. But the damage was already done. Lily crawled out from the closet, barefoot, her little toes sliding over the hardwood. She didn't ask again. She just sat beside me, her body pressed against mine, silent. I wrapped one arm around her. The good one. The one that didn't throb like it had been slammed by history. Forgiveness used to be survival. I used to believe that. But tonight, as I held my daughter close in the dark, I realized something else. Forgiveness might be survival. But silence. Silence would be my weapon. Sunlight makes liars out of everything. It dripped into the kitchen like nothing had happened, golden and warm, slicing the room into clean little pieces. Countertops, ceramic mugs, the corner of a fridge covered in outdated magnets. It didn't care about bruises, or broken glass, or the daughter who didn't sleep. I stood by the stove flipping pancakes. My left arm ached every time I moved. The bruise was high on my bicep, purple blooming beneath a sleeve I made sure was long. I kept my posture careful, shoulders pulled back, breath measured. The pan sizzled like it knew how fake the whole scene was. Behind me, the kitchen table was set. 3 plates, 3 mugs, forks arranged just so. Lily sat on the edge of her chair, Mr. Tumbles in her lap. She didn't speak. Her eyes were locked on me, steady and unblinking. My mother entered first. Robe tied tight, hair set, face already powdered like she was preparing for a sermon. "You're up early," she said, glancing at the food like it was a test she hadn't studied for. "Pancakes," I replied. Thought Lily might like something sweet. She sniffed, sat down, and began flipping through a church newsletter she'd pulled from her purse. "We don't start the day with sugar. It confuses the body." "It's Saturday," I said. She didn't argue. My father came in next, silent, moving like a man used to taking up space. He poured himself coffee, sat at the head of the table, and grunted a half-hearted, "Mornin'." Lily flinched at the sound. I brought over the plate and set it down gently. "Plain for you, Dad. No syrup. Just how you like it." He didn't thank me. Just started eating, jaw moving with slow precision like every bite had to prove something. I poured coffee into their mugs, sat down last. My arms were still trembling, but I kept the smile on my face like I'd sewn it there. My mother clasped her hands. "Let's pray." And we did. Or they did. I bowed my head, but the words didn't reach me. Her voice filled the space between us, asking for blessings and forgiveness, for strength, for family unity. Every phrase felt like it had teeth. When she said, "Amen," I opened my eyes and said it too. "Amen." Then I took a bite of my pancake and made a sound like delight. "I'm glad you're here," I said. "Maybe this is the time we fix everything." They didn't answer. They didn't need to. That was never the point. My father sipped his coffee. My mother picked at her plate, still humming some leftover note from the prayer. Lily watched me, her fork untouched. I gave her the softest smile I could manage. Later, when the table was cleared and the dishes were soaking, I brought Lily into the living room and sat her on the couch beside me. "You don't have to be scared," I whispered. Her fingers clutched the rabbit. "I'm not." "You were brave last night." She nodded. "I love you," I said. She leaned against me. I didn't cry. Instead, I traced the bruise under my sleeve with my fingers and thought about what I would do next. How I'd start small, quiet, thoughtful. How I'd let forgiveness be the mask they'd expect, while silence, my silence, would become the scalpel they never saw coming. In the guest bathroom later that day, I snapped a photo of the bruise. Just one. Then I saved it to a hidden folder. I would make breakfast again tomorrow. I'd smile through prayer. I'd keep the long sleeves and say all the right things. But under it all, something had shifted. Something permanent. They thought they had come to help me rebuild. What they didn't know, what they would never suspect, was that I was already starting the demolition. One silent piece at a time. The first mask I wore was made of smiles. Not big, toothy ones. Just the small, polite kind. The kind that suggest peace without promising it. I wore them in the kitchen, in the hallway, when I folded laundry next to my mother, or when I watched my father nod off in the recliner with the TV buzzing static into his half-empty coffee cup. They believed it. People like them always do. They taught me to wear the mask, after all. So I thanked them for their support. I asked them to stay longer. I even took my father's car in for a tune-up and printed new church bulletins for my mother, just to keep up appearances. And all the while, I was building something. The first thing I did was simple. I documented. I waited until Lily was asleep, until the dishes were clean and the house fell into that dead hush only old floorboards and resentment can hold. Then I went to the mirror, lifted my shirt, and took pictures. Bruises, faint finger shapes on my upper arm, a dark patch near my ribs. I labeled each image by date and saved them to a drive I kept hidden in the back of my closet behind an old shoebox of tax documents. Then came the recordings. My mother never could help herself. One afternoon, Lily was outside drawing chalk suns on the driveway. I was peeling potatoes at the counter. Mom stood in the doorway, arms folded like she was trying to hold herself together from the outside in. "You think God's proud of you?" she asked. I didn't look at her, just kept peeling. Living like this, a divorced woman, feeding your daughter poison with your lifestyle. She meant the pancakes, the music I let Lily listen to, the books we read together, anything that didn't come from a sermon or a parenting blog with scripture in the title. I had my phone recording in my apron pocket. Another day, I caught my father slamming the pantry door. The lock had stuck. He grumbled something about lazy women, rotten kids, and no damn respect. I didn't say a word. I just pressed record. By the third week, I had over a dozen audio clips, 24 photos, and a spreadsheet I kept in an encrypted folder. Dates, times, descriptions, witnesses, when there were any, patterns. But the deeper I looked, the more I found. Not just bruises and words, but the things they thought no one noticed. One afternoon while cleaning their room, I found a manila envelope in my father's suitcase. Inside, receipts. Dozens. Charitable donations made in their name to the church and several local organizations. All with suspiciously round numbers. The problem? The dates didn't match their bank withdrawals. And when I checked the church's website, I saw their names listed among gold sponsors of the new community hall. I knew my father's income. He wasn't sponsoring anything but suspicion. So I dug deeper. Online tax records, nonprofit databases. I made notes. One night, I overheard them talking in hushed voices down the hall. "She's acting different," my mother said. "She's trying to trap us," he answered. "You think she suspects?" "No, but I don't trust her smile." I smiled wider the next day. I baked banana bread. I ironed his shirts. I even went to church with them and shook hands with the same pastor who once said I was a beautiful example of redemption. My mother spoke after the sermon. "Our Emma's been through so much," she said to the pastor's wife, "but she's home now, rebuilding." I smiled again, said nothing. They taught me that silence was strength. They told me a good woman endures, that patience wins hearts, that suffering quietly makes you holy. They were wrong. Silence is a blade, patience is gasoline, and suffering, when seen through the right lens, is evidence. By the end of the third week, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was compiling, organizing, preparing. They thought I was healing, but I was archiving. They'd buried me in their own doctrine for years, of guilt, of shame, of sacrifice. Now I was pulling myself out, bone by bone, with a smile on my face and a mask they had sewn for me. I just made it fit a little too well. Sunday morning came dressed in performance. My mother's heels clicked down the hallway like punctuation marks. She wore her modest navy dress, fitted just enough to remind the other women she was still watching her figure, but conservative enough to pass the moral sniff test. A pearl necklace, a beige purse, and that same smug satisfaction of a woman who believed suffering made her sacred. My father had already backed the car out before I even had Lily's hair brushed. "You're late," my mother said, not looking up from her lipstick in the hallway mirror. "We're ready," I replied, adjusting Lily's collar. "Fix her ribbon. It's crooked." I tied it tighter. At church, everything smelled like lemon polish and breath mints. The air buzzed with soft gossip and saccharine greetings. The ushers handed out bulletins like gatekeepers to heaven. My mother took hers with a nod sharp enough to slice glass. She loved this place. Here, she was someone. A saintly woman, they said. Treasurer of the Women's Fund, organizer of every bake sale, prayer circle, and holiday banquet. She didn't just attend, she ruled, all grace and glittering authority. "Emma," a woman whispered, pressing a manicured hand to my shoulder as I passed. "So glad you're back in the fold." Back in the fold. Like I was some prodigal sheep returned, shamed and shorn, eager to repent. I smiled. "It's good to be here." I sat 2 rows behind my parents with Lily. They didn't ask me to join them. I didn't offer. I could see the back of my mother's head, every hair pinned precisely, unmoving even when she nodded to the pastor's points. When it came time for prayer requests, she stood, loud and reverent. "I just want to thank God for my daughter's healing, for bringing her back home in this difficult season." I kept my hands folded and my face still. Some people turned to look at me. Lily traced the hem of her dress with her fingers. After the service, during coffee and polite chaos in the fellowship hall, I began planting seeds. Just small ones. "I'm glad you're here," I told Mrs. Calder, who ran the nursery. "Lily's been struggling with fear lately, loud noises especially. I think it's the tension at home." She blinked, a little too fast. "Your parents home?" I gave a small nod. "They mean well, but Dad's old-fashioned, and Mom gets frustrated, especially with Lily." A pause, the kind that grows roots. "Nothing alarming," I added. "Just intense." I knew how the church worked. Gossip here wore prayer shawls and whispered under the guise of concern. I gave them just enough. A few days later, I met with Pastor Rains about volunteering. He was younger than I remembered. More beard oil and Instagram quotes than fire and brimstone. But he still lit up when my mother's name came up. "She's a pillar here," he said. I tilted my head. "She tries. But it's hard, you know. Lily's terrified of her sometimes. The yelling, the rules. It's a lot." He frowned. "Really?" I shrugged. "You know how it is. What people show in church and what they bring home aren't always the same." I watched that sentence land, watched it settle behind his eyes. The next Sunday, I told a woman in the choir, "Dad doesn't like Lily talking during meals. He says it's disrespectful. Last week he made her eat in the hallway." That wasn't true. Not yet. But I knew how this worked. They'd hear me, then watch him. And once people are watching, it only takes a crack. My mother noticed the shift. One evening after dinner, while Lily colored at the kitchen table, she lingered behind me at the sink. "You've been smiling too much," she said. "I know that look." I dried my hands, turned toward her slowly. "Then you must have taught it to me." She didn't blink, didn't flinch, just stared. But something inside her shifted. Her mask slipped, just for a moment. A flicker of something tight and uncertain. I held her gaze for 2 full seconds. Then I smiled. That week, 2 people pulled me aside during church events, asked gentle questions, said things like, "If you ever need help," and "We're here for you, Emma." I thanked them, touched my chest with one hand like I was holding back tears. They never noticed the fire behind my ribs. It wasn't grief, it was gasoline. And my mother, my saintly, brittle mother, had just struck the first match. Some revenge takes a moment. Mine started with an envelope. It wasn't dramatic. No midnight delivery or secret rendezvous in a parking lot. Just me, on a Tuesday afternoon, standing in a cramped office that smelled like burnt coffee and printer ink. The journalist looked up from his computer with a kind of practiced boredom that comes from years of hearing people say you're not going to believe this, and then being forced to believe it anyway. "Can I help you?" he asked. I placed the envelope on his desk. Inside were photographs, audio files, scanned tax forms, and a handwritten note with 7 words. "You'll know what to do." He slid a pen from behind his ear, tapping the envelope once. "This about the church fund?" I didn't answer. "Your name? Does it matter?" His eyebrows twitched, curious. "If this is what I think it is? Yeah, it might." I smiled. "Then you'll find it in there." He hesitated, but the weight of curiosity always wins with men like him. He opened the envelope and skimmed the first page, a printout of bank transfers labeled Women's Ministry Relief Donation, $3,500. Under it, a second transfer to personal checking, M. Clark. He didn't have to be a detective to connect the dots. His eyes flicked up to me. "These are real?" "Verify them," I said. "You're good at that." He stared for a long moment, then nodded. "We'll be in touch." I left before he could ask more. Outside, the wind cut sharp through my coat. A cold that made you aware of every breath. It was the first time in months I felt something close to calm. Not peace, just control. That night, I tucked Lily in early. She was half asleep before I finished reading her story. When I kissed her forehead, she stirred and whispered, "Mommy, are we safe now?" "Almost," I said. "Almost." Downstairs, I poured myself tea and sat at the table, phone face down. My reflection floated in the dark window. I looked tired, but not broken. There's a difference. Broken things give up. Tired things keep going, just quieter. By the third day, I knew the reporter had taken the bait. The first clue was the silence. My mother had stopped humming around the house. My father's temper had shortened to sharp, uneven bursts. They spoke in coded fragments. They can't know that, and will deny everything. They didn't mention me, but I could feel their eyes trace my every move. Friday night, my mother cornered me in the kitchen. "You've been talking to people," she said. "I talk to a lot of people," I replied. "You think you're clever?" I met her gaze. "No, I think I'm patient." For a moment I saw it, the flash of recognition that she no longer understood me, that I wasn't playing the old role anymore. She stepped closer. "If you ruin this family ruined itself," I said softly. "I'm just making sure everyone sees it." She slapped me. Not hard, not like before. More insult than injury. But it was the last time she ever touched me that way. I didn't raise my hand. I didn't need to. I just looked at her, until she looked away. That weekend, the story broke. Not front page, just a column on the local site. "Church funds under review. treasurer accused of mismanagement. It wasn't even their names yet, but everyone in town knew who the treasurer was. The word spread faster than the truth ever could. My phone buzzed with texts from people I hadn't heard from in years. Is it true? Are they okay? Did you know about this? I wrote back the same thing to each. They'll have to answer that themselves. At dinner, my mother tried to pray as if nothing had happened. My father didn't close his eyes. The clink of cutlery against plates filled the silence until it snapped under its own weight. You think you've won, my father muttered. I set my fork down carefully. Not yet, I said. But we're getting there. He slammed his fist against the table. The glasses rattled. Lily jumped. I didn't flinch. I looked him dead in the eye and whispered, You can't threaten what's already gone. He left the table first. My mother followed, whispering something about God's wrath and betrayal from within. I stayed where I was. Lily leaned into my arm. Did you make them mad? I smiled faintly. Sometimes people have to get mad before they tell the truth. When she went upstairs, I cleaned the table slowly, deliberately. The house felt smaller, lighter. Like all the old lies were finally cracking open, spilling their poison where everyone could see it. I poured the remaining tea down the drain and whispered to the empty kitchen, It's not about revenge. But maybe that was a lie, because beneath the calm there was satisfaction, not for their ruin, for my freedom. It was supposed to be a celebration. That's what my mother insisted. A family dinner, she called it. Though no one said what we were celebrating. Maybe it was damage control. Maybe it was delusion. She invited people like nothing had happened. Cousins, a couple of her church friends, even the pastor's wife. The guest list was curated to remind everyone how put together we were. How innocent. How blessed. I volunteered to cook. They let me. It gave me control over the kitchen, and more importantly, the timing. The roast went in at 4. Potatoes peeled by 5. I plated everything with care, warmed the plates, lit candles. I knew exactly when to serve. By 6:30, the dining room was full of polite chatter and paper-thin laughter. Everyone sat where my mother told them to, like props in a play. She wore a peach blouse and pearls. My father put on a jacket and even shaved. Lily sat beside me, her hair braided, her eyes wide. My mother cleared her throat, lifting her glass. To family, to forgiveness, and to standing together when the world tries to tear you apart. They all nodded. And then it happened. One of the guests, Darla from the church choir, bless her oblivious heart, set her phone on the table face up. It buzzed. She glanced down casually, then frowned. Margaret, she said, tilting the screen toward my mother. Isn't this you? Everyone looked. My mother took the phone. Froze. Her hand trembled slightly, but she quickly handed it off to my father, who looked, and went rigid. The headline was simple: Church treasurer implicated in misuse of funds. There was a blurry photo of a check. Her name. A quote from the journalist I'd visited. The documentation was thorough and verified through multiple sources. A hush fell over the table like someone had knocked the air out of the room. One cousin cleared his throat. Wow, he said. Is this serious? My mother's eyes darted to me. I thought we were here to eat, I said softly, folding my napkin. My father stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. You did this, he said, pointing at me. You little... Don't, I said. He looked ready to erupt, but I kept my tone flat, my body still. You taught me to be quiet, I continued, to keep family matters behind closed doors. But then you made sure those doors locked from the outside. No one moved. No one spoke. I pushed my chair back gently. I told you I forgave you, I said. And I meant it. Then I smiled. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It just means I waited. The room held its breath. My mother's lips parted, but she couldn't speak. Her face was pale, her knuckles white around the stem of her wine glass. My father was shaking. Rage or panic, I couldn't tell. The pastor's wife stood up slowly. I think I need to go. One by one, the guests followed. Some mumbled awkward goodbyes. Others didn't say a word. Chairs scraped. Jackets were pulled on. Doors opened and closed like exclamation marks at the end of a sentence no one wanted to finish. In less than 10 minutes, the table was empty. Except for the three of us. Lily sat silently. Mr. Tumbles clutched in her arms like a shield. I rose, picked up a plate, and took it to the sink. Behind me, my mother whispered, "You've ruined us." I turned slowly. "No," I said. "You ruined yourselves. I just took off the mask." My father opened his mouth, closed it again. I wiped my hands on a towel, took Lily's hand, and led her upstairs. That night, we ate leftover potatoes on the floor of my bedroom, her favorite cartoon playing low on the tablet. She giggled once, and I almost cried. Downstairs, the house was quiet. No more performances, no more curated prayers. Just the silence they taught me, and now had to live in. They didn't leave. That's the part that surprised me. After the article, after the dinner, after the cold, fractured silence that followed like fog crawling through every hallway, they stayed. I don't know if it was pride or desperation. Maybe both. My mother still held to the fantasy that her name meant something, that her pearls and prayer circles would insulate her from collapse. My father? He didn't believe in defeat. He believed in waiting it out. But no one came. No more visitors. No calls from the pastor. No invitations to church potlucks. Not even a reply to my mother's carefully crafted Facebook post. Sometimes trials come to test our faith. We remain strong in His grace. No one even liked it. The silence grew roots, and in that stillness, they began to unravel. The first sign was the porch. My father stopped sweeping it. He'd always been meticulous. Leaves gone before they hit the ground, gutters cleared like clockwork. But by the second week, it was layered in wind-blown debris. Then came the Sunday clothes, still ironed, still hung, but never worn. The final blow came 2 weeks later. The church removed my mother as treasurer. Quietly. No ceremony. Just a short notice on the bulletin. "We thank Sister Clark for her years of service. In her place, Mrs. Dell will serve as interim treasurer." They didn't even call her. She found out when she showed up, dressed in lavender, prepared to give a speech about moving forward with grace. The secretary at the front desk barely met her eyes. When she came home, she didn't speak. Just walked to her room, closed the door, and stayed there for hours. That night, my father knocked on my bedroom door. A strange sound, timid, uneven. I opened it to find him standing awkwardly, holding a small cardboard box. "We're leaving," he said. "Where to?" "Don't know yet. Might stay with her cousin for a while." I glanced down at the box. Inside, sweaters, a pair of shoes, a framed photo of them in younger days, smiling under some tree I didn't recognize. "You don't have to go," I said. His mouth twisted. "Don't mock me." "I'm not." He looked around the hallway like it might collapse. "You're the only one who came out of this clean," he muttered. "You knew what you were doing." I met his eyes. No, I didn't. I just knew what I wasn't going to do anymore. He left the box by the door and walked away. They didn't leave that night. Instead, they came to me again the next day, eyes hollow, voices flatter. And I said it. "Of course. Come in. Stay as long as you need." I stepped aside and watched them enter my house. Because that's what it was now. Mine. Not just legally, Not just on paper, spiritually, emotionally. They didn't speak as they settled into the guest room. They didn't pray aloud anymore. They didn't call anyone to explain their side. The fall wasn't fast. It was slow, bitter, heavy, like watching a statue weather in the rain. I gave them towels, clean sheets, rules, no yelling, no judgments, no Lily without me present. They agreed, heads down. For the first time in my life, they didn't demand anything. They simply asked. My father started mowing the lawn again, but quietly, like it embarrassed him. My mother cooked sometimes, wordless. She'd leave plates on the counter and disappear before I came into the room. One evening, Lily read a book out loud in the living room. A story about a little girl who stood up to a monster and found her voice. My mother sat nearby, folding laundry. Her hands paused. Lily said, "The monster didn't roar anymore, because someone finally told the truth." She looked up at her grandmother, then kept reading. My mother finished folding the towel. Didn't say a word. That night, my father asked if he could help fix the broken cabinet in the hallway. I told him yes, but only if he used the old tools in the garage, the ones he used to yell at me for touching. He nodded. Quiet. Compliant. As if every nail he hammered reminded him what it meant to rebuild something he never thought would fall. They thought they were staying on my terms. But the truth was simpler. They were staying on borrowed grace. And I never said it aloud, but I think they knew. The house they used to control now belonged to someone who didn't need to scream to be heard. Power doesn't always come back with a bang. Sometimes it returns as a whisper, a shift, a look across the room that says, "I remember everything you did, and now I don't have to say it." They didn't leave after the fall. That would have been easier. Instead, they stayed. Like smoke after a fire. Ash in the corners of a house that's still standing but no longer clean, and I let them. Each day, I gave them tasks. Small ones, at first. My father mowed the lawn, but only on Wednesdays. My schedule. My mother cleaned the kitchen, but I inspected every drawer. I told her where the plates went, what sponge to use. She nodded. He nodded. They followed every instruction like tenants on thin ice, and I made sure the ice never quite froze over. Lily adjusted faster than I expected. Kids are resilient, but they're not stupid. She saw the change. She felt it in the way my mother spoke more softly now, in the way my father stepped aside when she entered a room. But trust doesn't rebuild itself. So every night I read to her. Stories about brave girls, smart girls, loud girls. We read about dragons that could be reasoned with, about wolves that were really just scared dogs in disguise, and always, always, about little girls who found their voice and made the world listen. She'd sit beside me on the couch, Mr. Tumbles in her lap, and read the words herself when she could. Sometimes my parents sat nearby, silently, listening. I let them. Let them hear every page, every sentence. Let them sit in the quiet afterward, knowing that none of those stories were about them, but every single one was. They never interrupted. They never told her to lower her voice, or correct her posture, or criticize her choice of books, because they knew. Now, they were in my house. They were under my rules. The shift wasn't loud, it was slow, a long burn. I'd walk into the room and feel the air change. My father would lower his eyes. My mother would stiffen. I never raised my voice, not once, but they heard me in everything I didn't say. One morning, I handed my mother a grocery list. Not a request. A list. She blinked. "Do you want anything specific from the bakery?" I didn't answer right away. Just looked at her until she looked down. "Whatever's fresh," I said. "We like things fresh." That night, she made lemon cake, Lily's favorite. We didn't thank her. She never asked why. My father, once so loud, so certain, began checking with me before doing anything. Do you want me to trim the hedge today? Is it okay if I take the trash out now? Should I park on the street? Every question was a confession. He used to fill rooms. Now he barely filled his own shadow. I didn't punish them. I simply gave them structure. I gave them the boundaries they never gave me. One day, I saw Lily building a fort in the living room. She draped blankets across the couch, anchored them with books and pillows, and crawled underneath. Want to see? She asked. I peeked inside. A flashlight, a coloring book, 2 juice boxes. She held one out to me. This is the safe zone, she whispered. Is it? I asked. She nodded. Nothing bad happens here. I crawled in and sat beside her. The whole world felt far away. Outside the blanket walls, I could hear my mother folding laundry, my father sweeping the back porch. But in that small, warm tent of pillows and quiet, I felt something strange. Not victory, not revenge, just space. Freedom. A place where nothing bad happened. I looked at Lily and smiled. It really is the safe zone. She nodded and took a sip from her juice box. We stayed there until dinner. That night, I made them eat in silence. No prayers, no lectures, no passive-aggressive humming. Just forks and chewing and the sound of a girl who no longer had to hide in closets to feel safe. They never complained. They knew. Every task I gave them wasn't just about control. It was a reminder. Every chore, every polite yes, every quiet nod was part of the sentence they'd written for themselves. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't struck back. But I didn't have to. This wasn't fire and brimstone justice. This was something better. This was the slow burn. There's a moment in every long revenge when it stops feeling like revenge and starts to feel like repair. It hit me one night when Lily asked for a glass of water before bed. Nothing special, just her small voice, half asleep, clutching Mr. Tumbles by the arm. But when I came back with the glass, she was staring at herself in the mirror on the back of her bedroom door. Not playing, not giggling, just looking. Do I look like her? She asked. My heart slowed. Like who? She shrugged. Grandma, when she's mad. I knelt beside her. No, I said. You don't. She nodded, satisfied, and took the water. I tucked her in again, her blanket pulled up to her chin, the way she liked it. And I sat on the edge of her bed, watching her breathe, wondering how many more nights like this she'd need before her questions stopped sounding like trauma with a child's voice. Later, in the kitchen, my mother was wiping the counters again, a chore she'd already done twice. She didn't look up. She doesn't flinch when I enter the room anymore, she said softly. I stayed by the doorway. We just want Lily to smile again, she added. She does smile, I replied, because she's not afraid anymore. My mother's hand paused mid-wipe. She didn't look at me, just stared at the counter like it might forgive her if she scrubbed hard enough. She's a good girl, she whispered. I stepped into the room, slow, careful. She's not good because of you, I said. She's good in spite of you. And I left her there, in the sterile silence of a kitchen that didn't belong to her anymore. That night, I finalized the transfer paperwork. The old house, the one I grew up in, the one they used to dangle over me like a leash, was finally mine. Fully. Legally. They signed the documents months ago, believing they were making peace, helping their recovering daughter rebuild her future. What they didn't realize is that the future I was rebuilding had no space for them in control, only in consequence. The house was empty now. I hadn't set foot in it since the papers cleared. But I drove there the next morning. Alone. Parked out front. The yard was overgrown. Weeds curling around the porch steps. Shutters crooked. Paint peeling like old bark. It looked nothing like the temple they used to guard. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The scent hit me first. Stale air, old wood, something bitter like forgotten perfume. The walls were still lined with portraits, their smiles frozen in place. My younger face, framed and obedient, trapped in 100 glossy lies. I didn't touch anything. I just walked the rooms, floor by floor. Remembered which stair creaked, which corner I used to hide in with books. Where I first realized forgiveness was something I gave out of fear, not love. In the upstairs hallway, I stopped in front of a mirror. An old, oval thing, cracked along the side. And for the first time in years, I looked at myself without bracing. The woman in the mirror wasn't the girl they raised. She was something sharper, something clearer. Her mouth wasn't smiling, but her eyes weren't afraid. And just behind her, I could almost see another reflection, a girl in braids, with a rabbit in her arms, watching, waiting. I raised a hand to the glass. "This is yours now," I whispered. Then I walked back downstairs. I didn't take anything from that house. I didn't need to. The victory wasn't in ownership. It wasn't even in power. It was in clarity. When I got home, my parents were in the backyard. My father was patching the fence. My mother was picking weeds from the garden. I stood at the door for a while, just watching. Then I turned away. Lily was at the table, drawing. I sat beside her. "Do you want to go somewhere special this weekend?" I asked. She beamed. "Can Grandma and Grandpa come too?" I didn't flinch. "If they follow the rules," I said. She nodded seriously, like a queen giving her approval. I didn't need revenge anymore. I just needed the mirror to show the truth. And now, it finally did. A year later, they lived in a trailer on the edge of town. Not a desperate place, but not one you'd expect them to end up in. A rust-colored box tucked behind a gas station and a faded church billboard that read, "He sees all." Fitting, I suppose. They left my house the way most people disappear, quietly. No drama, no screaming. Just a packing of bags and a muttered, "We'll find somewhere." I didn't stop them. I didn't offer help. I just opened the door and said, "Be safe." And then I shut it behind them. The silence afterward was deeper than before. Not empty, just clean. Lily and I made new routines. She started second grade with a new backpack and a confident stride. I walked her to school every morning. We'd pass the church on the way, the one where my mother once held court in pearls and passive righteousness. No one mentioned her anymore. Her name was a ghost, something people flinched at but never spoke aloud. The funds were still under review. The church issued no formal apology, just a rotation of excuses and shifting treasurers. But people knew. They always do. My father no longer had buddies. The men who once joked at barbecues and slapped him on the back now crossed the street when they saw him. One even changed gym times. It wasn't revenge. It was social gravity. One day, Lily and I stopped by the bakery near the church after school. I let her pick a cookie. The woman behind the counter smiled at her, then looked at me and said, "You look happier now." I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't need to. In this town, silence had its own reputation. People knew without asking. They understood without explanation. And me? I let the silence speak for me. I didn't tell my side. I didn't publish a letter or post cryptic statuses. I didn't need a soapbox. I had a daughter who slept through the night. I had a home with no slammed doors, no bruises, no prayers twisted into punishments. I had peace. Not the shallow kind you perform at church luncheons, but the heavy, earned kind that settles in your bones and reminds you what enough finally feels like. One afternoon, while we were walking past the church again, Lily asked, "Are we safe now?" I stopped. The bells had just finished ringing, but no one came out. No smiling greeters, no my mother lookalikes. Just stillness. Yes, baby, I said. We're safe. She nodded and skipped ahead, the pink rabbit stitched to her backpack bouncing behind her. The world didn't change overnight. People still judged. Some still whispered. But it didn't matter. Because I wasn't afraid of them anymore. And I wasn't afraid of her. Forgiveness was never weakness. It was the mask I wore while I loaded the truth behind it. And silence? Silence was never surrender. It was the weapon I sharpened in every room they thought I'd cower in. Now I carry it like armor. When people see me in town, they smile politely, they nod, they lower their voices. They don't know what I might say, or what I might already know. That's the thing about silence. It stays long after the shouting ends. And in the quiet, it teaches people how to treat you. My mother once said, "A woman should never make a scene." She was right. Some of us don't need to. Some of us just walk away and let the silence burn down everything behind us.